Welcome back. This screencast is meant to accompany your study of working capital management in Chapter 16. Some basic terminology regarding working capital management. You recall from earlier in our studies that net working capital can be calculated by taking a firm's current assets and subtracting their current liabilities. It's a quick measure of liquidity, as you may recall. Looking at the policies that a firm may have, their working capital policies, has us exploring, and this is what firms actually do, or financial managers within firms, they look at each element of current assets and current liabilities and determine or manage how much the firm is going to hold and how they're going to finance those current assets or current liabilities. So when we talk about working capital management, what we're really looking at is how a firm goes about controlling their levels of cash, how they manage that, what they put their cash into as far as investing, how they determine how much cash they should hold, all of these different things, determining how much they should hold in receivables, inventories, and short-term liabilities. And for our purposes, we focus on accounts payable as the main short-term liability. So as I just mentioned, with working capital management, our focus is on the short-term needs of the firm. Cash, accounts receivable, inventories, all seen as current assets, those things that the firm can convert to cash within a year. Of course, cash is cash, no conversion needed there. Accounts payable, certainly something the firm is intending on paying within a year, we hope, at least. This is where, in the real world, the time is actually spent. For any typical financial manager, CFO, read into that, or even a controller for that matter, this is where they spend the time. Typically over half of a financial manager's time is devoted to worrying about the short-term needs of the firm. So we only devote a small segment, if you will, to this concept and topic area in this class, but in the real world it is very, very relevant, and indeed something that financial managers spend a lot of their time on, over half. One piece that, I don't know if it's odd on this slide, but it fits, and I wanted to throw it in here without creating another slide. So anyways, cash is king. Working capital management certainly focuses on cash. It's one of the, current assets. Cash is very important. If you read your textbook closely in chapters 1 and 2, your textbook author mentioned that cash is king and the importance of cash. When we say cash in the field of finance, we're referring to currency, actual cash that you can hold in your hand, as well as demand deposits. Demand deposits, think checking, savings accounts, very liquid deposits that a firm would hold with a bank. Some would also refer to cash as cash and cash equivalents. Same thing, cash equivalents are simply those demand deposits, things that the firm could convert to cash immediately if they had to. Cash management then is very, very important to the success of the firm. Ideally, in the field of finance, financial theory says that a firm should hold their cash to a minimum. They should make sure they have enough on hand for all of the things listed there on the slide for you. Enough on hand for day-to-day operations, enough on hand for precautionary measures, compensating balances, the unpredictability of cash flows, and speculatory needs. That's what a firm needs to keep cash on hand for. But financial theory says don't keep any more than that on hand. You should have your cash working for you. Put it to work, earning a return in some sort of investment vehicle, that type of thing. That's what financial theory says. Put it to work. All of those little bulleted items that I whipped through really quickly for you, the needs for a firm and what they need to keep cash on hand for, I'm not going to talk about any further, but read about them in your textbook. Don't miss them, please. Our quantitative measure for this segment of material is the cash conversion cycle, or the CCC, which looks at the length of time funds are tied up in working capital for a firm. You could also state that or think of it as the length of time between when a company makes payments to its creditors and when a company receives payments from its customers for the sale of those goods that they have provided, goods and or services, of course. You can compute it as follows there by taking something called the inventory conversion period, adding in the average collection period, and subtracting out the payables deferral period. So you could say an abbreviated terminology there that the CCC equals the ICP plus the ACP minus the PDP. Could be some kind of new little rap if you were so inclined. So how do we calculate all of these different elements in the cash conversion cycle, all of this alphabet soup, if you will? The ICP, or inventory conversion period, is calculated by taking the inventory outstanding and dividing that by the cost of goods sold per day. Cost of goods sold per day is cost of goods sold divided by 365. The ACP, the average collection period, is the same as the day sales outstanding. You've studied that already when you did financial ratio analysis, so that's not new to you. It's the same equation. And then the final element in the cash conversion cycle, the PDP, or payables deferral period, can be found by taking payables and dividing that by cost of goods sold per day. So both the ICP and the PDP use the same denominator. So let's look at our first problem here on your worksheet, problem number 1. We have Banya Corporation that has $1.6 million in sales, $200,000 in inventories, $150,000 in receivables, and $100,000 in payables. Their cost of goods sold can be found by multiplying 70% times the sales figure. What's this firm's cash conversion cycle? It's just plunking it into the equation that I just gave you. So you can pause this, give this a shot on your own, and when you plug it all into the equation, you should find that the ICP is 65.19, the ACP is 34.22, and the PDP is 32.59. You put that all together and you find that this firm's cash conversion cycle is 66.81 days, or 67 days. Is that good or bad? How do we measure this against what, if you will? Well, it depends on the industry measures or metrics. So for ICP, we're not going to get too hung up and worrying about inventory conversion periods in this class or managing inventory. It's just an element and tool we use to put it together in a broader equation like this. The ACP is we're talking about because you are going to read about in this chapter a little bit about accounts receivable management. I'm talking about it. And whatever terms the firm is offering their customers, if they're offering terms of net 30 days, that's what you're measuring that ACP number against. So if Banya Corporation offered their customers terms of net 30 days, a 34.22 average conversion period, or their DSO is actually pretty good, or average collections period, sorry, that's what I was stuck on, sorry guys. 34.22 compared against their terms, their standard terms of net 30 days, if that was what they were, would actually be good. It's somewhat acceptable that most customers will stretch their payables. Now the payables deferral period number, we measure that against whatever the firm's suppliers are offering them. So if their suppliers are offering them not 30 days, this also would be a good number. It's important to note that if you change any one of these elements in the cash conversion cycle, you change the whole number, and I think you can figure that out. That's pretty straightforward. It's also important to note that this cash conversion cycle number as a measure does help give us a window into how the firm is managing pretty much everything for themselves. The shorter the better. A shorter cash conversion cycle number compared to a larger one does show what studies have shown. It boosts profits, improves the stock price of the firm. It's a sign of good working capital management policies, quite frankly. Okay, accounts receivable management. I spend a little bit of time on this topic in the classroom, and I'm not going to do anything different here. For any given firm, there's usually going to be 4 key elements of their credit policy. in accounts receivable, you're looking at trade credit that you're offering to your customers. So it's unlike, actual merchants and what stores do. You go into, let's say, Kohl's department store, you buy something, you either pay cash or you put it on your check, debit card, or your credit card or something, but you pay for it right then, right there. Business to business is not the same thing. Business to business relationships usually involve trade credit. So for a firm to offer terms to their customers, they're going to do so and incur accounts receivable balances for themselves, and then later get that paid back to themselves by their customers. So for any given firm, there's usually 4 key elements of a credit policy that they're going to have. The first is the credit period. What terms are they offering their customers? Are they offering their customers net 30 days, net 40 days, net 60 days? Industry specific, depending on what they're selling and how quickly their customers can convert that to cash themselves. The credit period needs to be determined. Secondly, cash discounts. Cash discounts lower the sales price. They're going to lower the total dollar amount collected by the firm for their sales of their goods, but it usually has a pretty positive impact on the ACP and sales, of course, as well. Has an impact on the price too, I just mentioned. Usually boosts sales to offer a cash discount to a customer. How does that look? We usually express that something like 2/10 net 30, which would mean that we're offering customers a 2% discount if they pay in 10 days. If they don't take the discount, they've got to pay in 30 days. That's just a ballpark example for you. So it's up to a firm to determine if they want to offer a cash discount. Usually improves their ACP and certainly boosts their sales. Credit standards. How does the firm want to go about trying to collect the balances that they have outstanding? Do they want to be real tough and demand that their customers pay them on time in a timely manner? Or are they going to be kind of lenient and laxadaicious, allowing for a little bit of leeway? Up to the firm to decide. Industry specific again, but I will tell you from my experience that the longer a balance is open for a customer in the accounts receivable area on the books, the greater the likelihood that it will not be paid. So quick example, Ashley Furniture is my point of reference since that's where I manage receivables, and what I did for so long, our terms were net 30 days. If we had a customer that owed us balances that were in the 90-day ballpark, that their balances were 90 days or greater, we got nervous and worried. Once you get to that level, if your terms are not 30 days, the likelihood of the balance not getting paid is greater and greater the longer the time goes on. And you don't want to write out bad debt, even though your textbook author says that firms build that into things, that they have a bad debt reserve. No firm wants to sell goods that they're not going to get paid for. Think of yourself. Do you want to work and not get paid for it? No, I wouldn't think so. I know I certainly wouldn't. Business is the exact same thing. Lastly, the collection policy. What procedures does the firm use to collect the money owed to them? Your textbook author goes into a nice discussion in various collection policies and procedures firms can use. They talk about dunning the debtor, all of this stuff. I'm going to tell you from experience, sending letters and faxes and emails is just as good as wasting your time. Any letter that you fax and send is most likely going to land in the trash. Speaking from experience, it's how most customers handle things. A phone call or a face-to-face visit by a sales rep is far more effective. I know from experience. And of course, if your product is hot, high demand, you can always go ahead and hold future shipments. That usually gets the attention of the customer very quickly. But it might hurt your sales. So always a fine line in everything a firm does. They want to strike balance. They want to strike balance in minimizing bad debt. They want to strike balance in still trying to maintain and increase sales so the company can continue to grow. Always industry specific, but those are just a few nuts and bolts for you. So let's look at a couple more problems. Let's look at worksheet problems 2, and 3, and we'll look at another way to compute the DSO or ACP, and then we'll also look at freeing cash up and what that does for the firm. So let's look